Hi everybody, my name is Brianna Dignard, and today I'm here to talk about what is to some a beloved Halloween decoration, and to others a terrifying flying object. That is bats. I've got my bat shirt on, bat earrings in, and I'm even wearing bat socks, now that you can tell. But today we're going to talk about some myths and facts associated with bats. Alright, fact number 1. That is that bats like to swoop down to you and get tangled in your hair. This is false on a couple of accounts. Number 1, bats aren't actually swooping down to you. So if you're outside and you happen to see a bat and it swoops towards your head, it's not trying to swoop towards you. It's trying to actually catch the insects that are gathered around you. So think about it, you're on a walk outside, it's nearing dark. There's probably a lot of mosquitoes or other flying insects that are close to you and are trying to attack you. The bats want to eat those insects, so it's going to where the insects are dense, that is, around you. So the bats are trying to attack not you, but the insects that happen to be attacking you. In addition, bats have no interest in getting tangled in your hair. Unlike birds, bats don't build nests, they roost instead, and they're not in need of your hair to build a nest or for any other reason. I wouldn't want to get tangled in your hair, so a bat doesn't want to get tangled in your hair either. This myth goes hand in hand with another myth that is that bats are blind, and that leads me into actually our first fact. So fact number 1, bats can see really well. They have both our conventional eyesight, so we think of how we see with our eyes, and they can also use echolocation to see in the dark, essentially. Echolocation is when bats emit really fast, high pulses of sound. So they would emit the pulse of sound out, and they wait for it to hit an object and come back to them. Using the amount of time it takes for that between that pulse being sent out and coming back, they can create an acoustic or kind of sound image of the area they're around. And that allows them to see even if they can't actually use their eyesight to see. There are some bats that have really good conventional eyesight as well, and studies were done on, in this case I'm talking about an Egyptian fruit bat, where they trained these Egyptian fruit bats to distinguish between two different objects, and they trained them in the dark. So I have two different objects right here. They trained the bats to be able to tell the difference between these two different objects. Well, not these two different objects, but two different objects in the dark. So the bats are putting together an acoustic image of what these objects looked like. But then they took the bats and put them in the light and saw if the bats could distinguish between the objects using their conventional eyesight, having only seen the objects before acoustically, and the bats were able to tell the difference. It would be very similar to if I had only felt these objects with my hands and then opened my eyes and without touching them again tried to distinguish which object was which. So bats are able to use one sense to inform another type of sense, which is super cool. Myth number 2, bats suck blood. Technically, no bats suck blood. If you're thinking of bats that do consume blood, however, you're thinking about vampire bats, which do actually exist. However, vampire bats only make up 3 species of 1,400 species of bats that exist in the world, and they only live in Central and South America plus Mexico. So if you don't live in those 3 places or regions, you have nothing to fear from vampire bats in the first place. You also have nothing to fear from vampire bats in the first place because while they do consume blood by making a little tiny cut into whatever they're consuming the blood of and lapping up that blood, they typically only do so on horses, pigs, or cattle, or other type of livestock, and they only consume about a tablespoon of blood at a time. So unless you happen to be camping outdoors, exposed in Mexico, Central, or South America in a very high vampire bat infested area and not paying attention to what's going on to you, you're not going to get your blood sucked or consumed by a bat. Fact number 2, bats are incredibly important to the environment. We just talked about the 3 types of bats that do consume blood, but all other types of bats consume a wide variety of foods, from pollen, fruits, nectar, insects, even small animals. And the fact that different types of bats consume so many different types of food is very important for us. So bats that consume insects or insectivores eat all of the insects that we don't want to eat us, like mosquitoes, or they eat other insects that often will harm agricultural products. So if you ever hear of crops being infested by certain types of insects, bats can act as kind of a natural pest control to help reduce some of those insect populations affecting agriculture. Bats that eat fruit, nectar, and pollen all act as important pollinators or spreaders of those plants. So if you have a bat that's eating a fruit, the fruit has seeds in it, and as they eat that fruit, the seeds will go through the digestive system of the bat and get pooped out, often in a place that is very far away from the place that plant originally was, allowing new fruit plants to grow. And by passing around nectar and pollen, they are allowing other plants to become pollinated and grow into whatever they're supposed to be. So, for example, agave is a plant that is often pollinated by bats, and agave is used to make tequila. So next time you're drinking a margarita, thank the bats for it. Cashews, papaya, mango, acai, lots of trees that are used and prized for their wood, and other very local or culturally important natural products are all pollinated by bats. So not only are bats offer no harm to us, they're actually helping us. Myth number 3, all bats have rabies. This simply isn't true. It's estimated that probably about less than 1% of bats have rabies, and the likelihood of you getting rabies from a bat is probably similar to the likelihood of you getting rabies from any animal in the wild. However, you can still get rabies from a bat if it happens to have it. So if you have any contact with a bat, make sure you go to a doctor afterwards. But also don't touch a bat that's laying on the ground, or don't handle a bat if you're not properly trained to. Bats are still wild animals, and while they are adorable and great for us in the environment, don't mess with them. They like to be left alone. That's just good advice for dealing with wild animals. Fact number 3, humans are more of a threat to bats than bats are to humans. Bats can carry disease. They make up 20% of mammal populations, and viruses like to spread and grow and evolve throughout a lot of different species. However, the threat comes to humans only when those bat viruses can transfer and infect humans as well. And a disease that can transfer across species is called a zoonotic disease. This is something that has happened in the past. Outbreaks of like the Marburg virus or different coronaviruses did start in bats and then transferred to humans, but there are many other reasons why the disease made it all the way from the bat to the human than just because bats were existing. A lot of these reasons are due to poor sanitation conditions, such as found in like rural local communities or wild or exotic meat markets or pet markets. And in these, they have really poor sanitation conditions, so people get exposed to the bat feces or bat urine, or even other types of animals' feces and urine that contain viruses, and then the humans get infected with the virus. If you practice proper safety or sanitation conditions, wash your hands, don't eat bats or other wild bush meat, you're at a very low risk of getting a disease directly from a bat. However, when virus outbreaks like this occur, everybody blames the bats, and it immediately goes to, let's get rid of all of the bats versus let's improve our sanitation conditions. However, if we get rid of all of the bats, we're getting rid of all of the really important things they do for us, such as, again, getting rid of those insects or pollinating plants for us. It'd be a lot more beneficial to improve sanitation conditions. In addition, bats are actually really susceptible to disease as well. So there's something called white nose syndrome, which is caused by a fungal infection spread from bat to bat. And since bats all like to live in really tight communities, bat diseases can get passed from bat to bat really easily. So if you've ever visited a cave before that's been infected with white nose syndrome, it can affect humans, but a lot of times they'll ask you to disinfect your shoes when you leave the cave to avoid tracking that fungus that may be attached to your shoes or your clothes into another area where bats could come into contact with it and spread the disease. So we're actually spreading diseases around that are infecting the bats and are really bad for the bat populations. And that's never a good thing. We want to protect the bats because of all the many important things they do for us. Bats are not the scary villains that often media or other movies can make them out to be. They are amazing creatures that offer a whole host of benefits to us and to the environment. That being said, again, remember that bats are wild animals, and if you see a bat on the ground, don't touch it. It's not good for you or the bat. If you are really interested in learning about saving the bats, go check out local bat conservation efforts in your area. Now, one of the things that I like to do with my husband's family is to rate fun facts. One of us will say fun fact and then give a fun fact, and that invites the other people who heard it to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. So I want to carry that on here and have you guys comment down below about what you want to rate a fun fact I give you for each video. So today's fun fact I want you to rate is that bats are the only mammals capable of powered flight. And in addition to birds, they're the only vertebrates capable of having powered flight. So please comment and rate that fun fact on a scale of 1 to 10 below. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please hit that like and subscribe button. And I will be posting every Tuesday and Friday. Happy Halloween and keep it sciencey.